MEC, thank you very much for coming through. Now, you know, Gauteng is often lauded as being the fourth largest economy in Africa. Certainly in South Africa, it's the bedrock of the economy with the city of Johannesburg. It accounts for 35% of national GDP. So lots of successes, a lot to build on. What are you going to do to just keep Gauteng moving forward?
Certainly, I'm really looking forward to this new responsibility, and I know it comes with a lot of challenges. However, marshalling and mobilizing all different sectors, including different business chambers, one should be able to pull things together so that we can indeed build on the successes that were built by my predecessors. Those range from the early days when Muleketi was still in the provincial government, followed by Mashatile, Nkomfe, and Kachala. So it's important to build on those. But also it's important for us to look beyond of what has been done and think outside of the box. As you correctly stated, Gauteng is one of the largest economies in Africa. Therefore, we cannot be comfortable of what we've been able to achieve because people have lost jobs during the recent recession. We've just seen now Standard Bank retrenching people. So it's important for government to work towards making sure that people create decent work in that process.
You mentioned Standard Bank, and I mean that speaks to the fact that financial services has now evolved as the dominant growth sector within the province. And many people are saying, because foreign investors are now very curious about the African continent, Johannesburg especially, but Gauteng province could be used as the gateway into the rest of Africa, particularly in the area of financial services, using the province as an economic zone in the way in which London is for Europe, New York, Hong Kong for Asia. What are you doing about that? You're
absolutely correct with your observation. One of the things I've spoken to the different mayors, particularly the mayor of Tshwane, who is new and he's a businessman in his own right, that Tshwane we need to look into what are the sectors that we need to be supporting as government and look at different options of supporting those. I've discussed with the mayor of Ekurhuleni, who's also new, and the good thing about these two mayors, both of them have economics training and they've got some business acumen in them. And I think together we'll be in a position to come up with new ideas such that we prop up the manufacturing sector, whether be it in the steel industry. Yesterday morning I had a discussion with the big business around steel and what are the possibilities on those issues. There's issues around the green economy, the alternative source of energy. If you look at California today than it was about a few years ago, it's important to leverage on those sectors that can help us to create the number of jobs.
Let me just get Vickers' input here. I think, you know, experts say the biggest sector you can leverage on is financial services because the infrastructure exists, the expertise is here, a lot of international players clamoring to enter the space.
We have a very well developed financial sector in South Africa, and it's obviously centered in Johannesburg, so that makes a very good starting point. What you need to do there is to actually make sure that you maintain very good regulation, and you need to get the balance between too strict regulation and too easy regulation. You must make it attractive for people to come here, but at the same time people must have trust in Johannesburg as a now that's really not a local government function, it's actually a central government function. The thing that local and provincial government can do to support this is really an infrastructure issue. If you never know how long it will take you to go from Pretoria to Johannesburg, that's a big problem. So infrastructure is a massive issue, and also I guess the whole question about electricity is also a very big issue.
Okay, let's talk about
for financial markets.
Infrastructure, because we know that there was a lot of money spent on upgrading infrastructure for the World Cup tournament, and within the CBD things worked really well, but we still have problems with traffic congestion, for instance. We see the city sprawling for kilometers, almost Johannesburg and Pretoria, almost one city. So the whole issue is, how do you make this a functioning mega city at an infrastructure and services level?
It's very easy, Lerato. I'm a very simplistic, I always approach things from a very simplistic point of view. If you remember what provincial government did in the previous years, I happen to have sat in the political committee on the Gautrain, and I know the ins and outs of how Gautrain was conceived, and up until we decided on the consortium, now Gautrain is built, and I'm confident that the work that has been done so far, we will be able to position the latest around June or so next year, the leg between Park Station and Pretoria and up to the airport. That leg will be completed, then Gauteng again, that will ease the congestion on our road. And secondly, part of why we must focus on getting the Gauteng to work is to get people off the road. And I think when we're at the time of conceiving the train, we were not sure whether people are going to like. We've surpassed all the numbers that we were projecting in terms of the beginning of this leg. The fact that now the train is a success, and one of the things that we've got to leverage on is using the Gauteng backbone infrastructure to make sure that Metro Rail comes on board, and also for the rest of the other transport mode, whether it be BRT in Tshwane. Gauteng is too small for us to have a very complicated infrastructure. We've got to try and make sure that the intermodal connections between city to city, that is improved for the better.
It's not just the Gautrain though and transportation issues, it's energy supply. When we had rolling blackouts in 2008, the impact on the Johannesburg economy or the Gauteng economy was significant. It literally shut down the country. So in a way, you've also got to be having a conversation with a utility like Eskom.
Yeah, we've got to, and not only with the certainties about Eskom, about water security as well, because there's no point in attracting people to come here and they don't have the basics of functioning, whether it be in business or in their households. So this discussion with Eskom is going to be essential. Discussion with Eskom as well as national government around the introduction of IPPs, which is a government policy, getting independent power producers and also getting the renewable energy on the ground. And I'm talking about California, comparing the solar farms there. It's exactly about creating alternatives to the electricity and making sure that we also talk to the climate change.
But also, MEC,
and
issues about affordability. I mean, we are citizens of the city, and it's not cheap to live in the city when you start talking about rates and taxes and utilities that are provided. Now, we all know the debacle at Eskom. We all know that electricity is being subsidized and it's cheap, etc. But even local government and what they charge for services, could there be some sort of a review? Because there is a sense that it's getting too expensive to function in the city, to live in this city.
Well, I haven't applied my mind in details to that, but what I can say, Lerato, is that any big cities in the world, be it London, be it Paris, be it New York, it's costly to live in the metros. And of course, one of the things that we're trying to do as provincial government, working with municipalities, the issue of introducing efficient public transport and reliable public transport is one of those of those things that government has got to put resources in, and also crowd in other private sector investors to come on board. On the other hand, for instance, if I earn 1,000 rand and I spend 500 rand on public transport, it's useless for someone to be working. You're also only working on going to work, but there's no benefit for you to be benefiting in that regard. But also from a rates and taxes point of view, it's important for municipalities to be sustainable, yet we should not overburden citizens. One of the things that I've said to the managers in the department, we need to look into the cost of doing business from end-to-end process, from A to Z, whether when someone comes to South Africa to want to invest or they want to establish a business processes in South Africa, rezoning on all of those things. We're looking into all of those so that there must be one-stop shop from all over the province.
Just your comments on everything that's been said about affordability, about infrastructure. For any potential foreign investor looking at the various opportunities in South Africa, is Gauteng naturally a place for people to gravitate towards? I mean, if you look at real estate investors, they all want properties in the Western Cape and now increasingly in Mbele, KwaZulu-Natal.
Those are the people living in Gauteng who want those properties. The international people are actually gravitating towards Johannesburg because Africa is one of the big next markets in the world, and the young people in the whole of Africa will want to do what the cool people in Joburg does. So Joburg is an extremely important destination for international.
We're cool by living here. Okay, you mentioned manufacturing earlier on, and one of the biggest ironies is that despite this province being the nucleus of industry and economic activity, the manufacturing sector in the province is lagging other provinces like the Western Cape, like the Free State, for instance, and yet we know manufacturing is the center for job creation. It is where you can absorb the unemployed, of which there are too many.
There's a lot of sectors I've looked into, whether it be steel and creating capacity to not only produce steel in Gauteng, but also make sure that you beneficiate and business people are able to buy steel cheaper in South Africa. And of course, we've had a discussion at a very senior level in government looking into how to make sure that we create that capacity in Gauteng, beneficiation and otherwise. But also on the other hand, we've looked at the pharmaceuticals. The fact that I was in health, I've got an advantage of having understood 80% of the things that is supplied in hospitals are imported things. So it's important for us to, in terms of raw material, it's important for us to create that capacity on the manufacturing from pharmaceuticals. And of course, even if it means that we've got to look into incentives of some kind or the other, is something that government is prepared to do. And Mama principle is, Lerato, you must look at the 80-20 principle. Right. You must spend 20% of the things that will give us 80% benefit, instead of spending 80% of time and resources, yet we're getting only 20%, and that is not going to fly.
All right. You also work hand in hand with a variety of development agencies, but under scrutiny, it's been found that they don't work efficiently. There are huge corporate governance issues, allegations of inflated salaries being paid to executives. I know that your predecessor introduced a slashing of board fees, for instance, but just basic needs to improve oversight and corporate governance and accountability for development agencies within the province. What are you going to do about that?
It's an important point you're raising. One of the things I was saying to all the CEOs that I've met with today, and then all the senior managers in the department, is that we are not a stakeholder with the agencies. They account to us, because I go to the legislature to account on the resources that have been appropriated by the legislature to us. So the relationship has got to change for the better. Number two, agencies can't behave as if there is no government mandate around the industrial policy, around the growth and employment and development strategy that is existing. So they've got to make sure that all their plans, from liquor to film to tourism to JEDA to Blue IQ, all of their plans have got to talk to the government strategy. So those things, I think some of them it is happening to a very great extent. I think we need to tighten one or two areas in that regard, so that we can all be streamlined. But the department is accountable to the public, and resources are given to us, and everybody else will have to fall into line.
And finally, unfortunately, despite it being cool, as Vicar says, to live in Johannesburg, it's also quite unnerving, because this is regarded as a very dangerous city to live in. Security issues that you need to consider, and in fact the crime situation in South Africa has been a deterrent for a lot of foreign direct investment. How are you working with the various security agencies to ensure that Gauteng is a safe province to live and a safe province to work, so that the investment does flow?
I think the important issue is that the redeployment of MECs from one portfolio to the other. We've got MEC Mazibuko, who's very capable of dealing with this matter, in making sure that the investors that we're talking to feel safe. Not only investors, South Africans in general should feel safe in their homes, and also to feel safe that when they leave their children and they go out on a river or they go to a restaurant, they feel safe. It is our interest to work with the MEC for community safety, as well as all other security agencies in the province, to make sure that when we say to people go out to restaurant and eat, they do not have unintended consequences and come back, there is nothing at home, and all of those things. So it's important to work with all our sectors, and one of the things that we've discussed in the provincial government is how to make sure that the Metro Police does not only focus on ticket fines, but they focus on helping us to reduce social crime and focus on social crime prevention, and those are the things that we're focusing on. And I'm confident that we are going to turn things around and build on the successes that our predecessors have made in the past.
Thank you very much to the newly appointed MEC for Economic Development in Gauteng, Qedani Mahlangu.